So I'm going to start with this one, which I think is the most ambitious critique for today. So someone submitted this to the subreddit, and I'm going to be critiquing it. And I feel like there are, oh, whoops, I never set up my mic. I'm so sorry. I'm starting over. So someone submitted this to the subreddit, and I wanted to critique it today and talk about how to stage it so that the illustration is at its most appealing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two different light zones. There's a lot of rim light behind him, so it seems like he's standing in front of some kind of moon. And I'm also going to take care of the red that's glowing. This red in his eyes that's glowing, this demonic type of half light, half red that's happening here, that needs more shadow in order to really get pulled off and in order to be visible. Then you've got daylight skin tones. You have straight up warm tones. Look at this. This is the definition of warm skin tones. Now, warm skin tones are visible because of a warm light, usually sunlight or interior light of some kind. Where in this light environment, which is basically the time of day, is basically what light environment means in a short form, where in this dark scene are we getting sunlight values? That's how you kill your illustrations. When you kill the light environment, you kill your illustrations. Write that back to me. This means that your light environment is inconsequential to you. You couldn't give a damn. You just, whatever colors you wanted, you put together. A lot of people disagree with me and say, hey, people can do whatever they want. Sure, but they will fall in a specific category of skill, and they won't be able to wiggle themselves out of that skill. Why, Istebrak, do they want to wiggle themselves out of that category? Why does anybody want to be categorized into a higher skill set? Because it pays more, and most of you, don't argue with me, most of you want to get paid for your art. Most of you don't want 9-to-5 jobs. You're in this to win this. So most of you want your job to be art. This means you have to raise your skill level. This means you have to stop just putting whatever colors that you want together. This means you have to put thought into the temperature of colors you're using. That means temperatures and colors reflect the light environment. So that means that you have to think about your light environment and the temperature of colors allowed in that light environment. So I'm going to start with a lasso as quick as possible. I'm going to try to get through this critique today. And this lasso, if I could just get started on it. This lasso is just me separating the two worlds of the environment. There may be light on this camera that is illuminating this guy's face. But for now, I lost my lasso. God fucking mother damn it. Okay. So the camera light might be illuminating his face, but for now what I'm doing is I'm trying to at least respect the light environment. The biggest light source in the scene is the light environment. Write that back to me. That's the sunshine, that's the moonshine, that is the flame. Whatever is the biggest light environment in the scene decides the wash and decides the color temperatures, decides the contrast, it decides everything. The biggest light in the scene, the primary light source, decides everything. So I've separated two worlds right now. We have two worlds. I'm going to preserve my lasso. Oh, I'm going to preserve my lasso so I don't lose it. And I'm going to now darken in two different ways. I'm going to darken. In two different ways I'm going to edit this section. These skin tones of daylight values need to be adjusted in two ways. This is my method. There are many methods, but this is my method. The first one is going to be a color temperature change, meaning we're now going to start respecting the temperature of the environment around. Color layer, soft brush, and I'm completely, drastically bringing down the values. I'm going to change the opacity on that though, to come down to somewhere here. So the colors have been adjusted to be nighttime skin tones. Before, after. Yes, you miss the saturation. I know you do. You have an eye for it. Humans do. But for now, we're going to start at a much lower saturation level so that we can get temperatures that make sense. The next thing I'm going to do is preserving the lasso. I'm going to go on darken, and I'm going to fill this scene, the dark half, the half that's facing away from the light, is going to get a darkened layer with this temperature blue, this blue of the environment. So now we've corrected the colors, and now we're correcting the darkness of that half that is not facing the light. Okay? The light is behind him. I know my lasso isn't great here. I'll fix that. So now we're going to select inverse. Okay? Very, very simple mathematical changes. They're not changes that require a lot of thought. They just require a lot of faith. I'm going to illuminate this far half of the painting to represent that moonlight that's shooting in through his hair, through everything. Okay, so now we have like two worlds of value. One half is full of light, one half is full of shadow. I'm going to go to before I did all these changes, and I'm going to preserve that value here. So now we have the background correction, the darkness correction, and the color correction. So before, after, before, after. So now what we do is we do those smaller conditions where we have gradients, where we have variations. So the shadow of the highlight of his hair gets darker the closer it gets, and more hairy it gets the closer it gets to his face. And then we also want to show that on the outsides of his hair, just over here, these areas also got illuminated in the same way. He's being silhouetted by this intense moonlight behind him. Maybe I can switch it to color dodge. Oh, I see. So I'm bringing up a lot of these colors, and I'm going to color correct to make it match. That moonlight behind him is just exploding through, causing all this light to come through the image. And I'm just trying to establish that moonlight just there as mostly rim light. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the majority of the rim light that's on his face. So this intense light behind him is causing this almost outline on the far side, especially on the parts that peek out the most. Okay, and I'm just trying to outline these areas so that we get a lot of that moonlight coming through. All right. And then there's also just a lot of light that's hitting the far side of his face as well, illuminating that. So I'm going to try to do that with dodge tool to the best of my ability, and then deleting away at what I don't need. So we're setting up the primary conditions, and then the secondary conditions follow after that. So the nose blocks off a lot of the light from reaching through. And then of course I'm going to color correct because dodge tool damages colors when you use it. Oops. Okay. And then I'm blending out any flat surfaces, get a wider range. And again, color layer. And just trying to get the same colors to kind of come through. And mixing both the blues and the skin tone together. And then deleting away at what I feel like is too much. Then normal. And then just trying to limit some of that rim light there, creating sharper, stronger edges. So there's a lot of light for me to figure out. Because you know you've got your red light, you've got your moonlight, and so I'm trying to find the balance of both. And then I'm going to, so we really needed that far light, and then I'm going to find the edge, that pocket edge of where the light really gets dark around his hair. So midtones. Again, I'm focused mostly on the hair for this section, deleting away at what might have gotten darker on the inside. So I'm going to try to critique all these pieces today. It might be a bit of a long critique hour. Okay, and so we have now a bit more shadow on that inside of the hair. Just like that. Maybe a little bit more. And then I'm going to try to bring out that light that's directly behind him. So that moonlight, for it to do this much, it really needs to go up. Not so much that it's turned into daytime, but just enough that we have some kind of glowing gradient at the top. This isn't a new layer. Again, I'm deleting away. Just so that moonlight kind of eats up more of the scene. Just like that. So that really, really strong light behind him. I'm not trying to change too much of your original character. I didn't touch the character. I'm just touching the light environment, touching the majority of the atmosphere, or the light atmosphere. And then I'm blending that down. So one of the issues is that one side has texture for the hair and one side doesn't. So I'm going to try to mimic what you did here with the hair, which is so pretty, these brush strokes you have here. And I'm trying to darken everything on that inside layer while adding this new hair texture in an attempt to kind of mimic what you did. Working large to small is the secret for hair. This light behind him is catching all of that light in the hair, that glow in the hair, sorry. And I'm letting some flyaways hang out here as well. And the flyaways really give away the light, really create that atmosphere. So now I'm going to get my lasso again, and I'm going to start being very controversial. I'm going to darken a lot more now that I've created these steps. So the furthest step, the closest step, and all of that. Now that I created these steps, I'm going to start doing what I would instinctively do if it was my painting, which is darkening a lot more and creating like this another further setup of steps from the light source. So we have this like really nice denial of the light on an atmospheric level. And maybe this color will do better. Okay. Okay, and then again, just trying to delete away at what I feel like I don't need. Creating a really strong separation between the light half and the dark half. So we're almost getting like this side view that's being revealed by the light source. And then now that I did that, I can start to pretend that there's a light on the camera. And I'm deleting away where I feel like that light on the camera is revealing value. And I'm just messing around with some of these levels. I don't know what that layer is. I'm going to merge it down. And trying to combine now, creating like middle grounds between these steps. I'm not so worried about that far eye, since I feel like that far eye will get a lot of that red that will really come through. And now that we've done that, we can really also push the highlight along the nose. And once I finish this highlight along the nose, I'm going to start going into liquify and correcting some of these features, because some of the features you have here have not been rotated properly. All right, so we're jumping into liquify, and I need to basically align all of these features back together. They're all over the place. The lips, you're showing way too much for lips in 3/4 view. And I want to keep the same smile, but I'm not trying to distort the face completely just for a smile. This eyebrow is straight up front view eyebrow. There is no rotation at all on this eyebrow. You're trying to show too much of that eyebrow. This is also nearly a front view eye. The eyes are like way too low on the face considering the size of the forehead. The shoulders also seem like the neck feels like it's much thicker than the head is big, which is also throwing off the anatomy. So lots of changes. That whole eye was fully collapsed. And I'm raising the density and just raising up those features. There's almost no perspective consistency anywhere. And I'm tucking in that far eye so that cheekbone can come out. And we're just trying to be consistent with your perspective. Again, before, after, before, after. And I just want to show that the head can kind of project out further than the neck. And I know it's a stylized eye, and I'm going to keep it stylized, but still, there are some things that have to be rotated. Before, after, do you see how collapsed that inner eye was? Before, after. Okay, and so now I'm just gonna try to do some rendering. I'm just gonna blend the eyebrow in. I'm gonna blend the value of the nose. And doing my best with the time I have. Just trying to build out that anatomy. The lips, as we have already seen from my campaign on 3/4 view lips, the lips are not what? What's the word? The lips are not cylindrical. And so there's no shadow here either. So I'm just gonna add that shadow there ever so slightly. I'm gonna blend out the lips, flipping the canvas. And I want to keep that smile while also having a balance between style and realism. And we do that by slowly showing how the muscles are smiling. I may need to jump back into liquefy for that. In 3/4 view, the eye in 3/4 view is tucked away mostly on one side than the other side. We see the outer corner more than the inner corner. So lots and lots and lots of problems and no studies. So doing straight up masterpieces is never a good idea if you haven't even done one 3/4 view study, or 3/4 view study even for your style. So this whole kind of perspective here is just a little bit skewed. I'm also going to raise the eyebrow just to give him something else expression-wise. And I'm going to raise the arc of the brow just to show some, I don't know, some kind of curiosity. Just to keep pushing the presence of that mysterious, demonic, half-light type character trope. I'm going to add a bit more hair here and add the shadow of the hair. And I believe I've fixed the majority of that perspective. I'm trying to match the original character's general look. And I think he has much bigger eyes than this. So I could either do that with transform or liquefy. So I'm going to increase the size of the eyes. Now that the eyes are all proportionate, I can increase the size with no worries because the proportion is intact. Then flipping the canvas to make sure it doesn't look too weird. Might shrink them back down a touch. Okay, so I'm pushing that eye in and just making the eyebrow feel. Actually, you know what? The original eyebrow is fine. It's just the eye that might need to be bigger. Because in this type of 3/4 view, we see a lot of the side of the temple, which means we're seeing a lot more of that part of the eye. And then I'm going to flip the canvas. Trying to figure out what's happening with the perspective. And blending out this eyebrow, which is bugging me because the eye is bugging me. Because the eye is not 3/4 view. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's going to be tricky figuring this out. And then I'm just going to try to control that rim light one more time. Really only having it bright, only where we really need it. Because that far eye is going to get a lot of that glow in it. So I'm not worried about that far eye. Okay, so it feels like the face is like too small for the head. So sometimes just copying the whole face and increasing the size of the face and nothing else fixes a lot of mistakes. I think that, oh yeah, that definitely helped. Like before, the face was too small for the size of the head and the size of the shoulders. Way too small. and merging that down. And something's bugging me about these eyes. I just gotta figure it out. I'm not trying to render them completely, but there is something about them that's just not quite right. I think it's this inner corner. It's this indentation here. It's a lot. It's the whole shape. It's the whole style. You can't like add realism to this much faith in anime. Like you have to break the faith of anime just a little bit and try something. Try relying on another set of rules to support the realism to make that anime even more believable, because realism combined with style makes the style that much more magical because it brings life to the style. And I'm just trying to add some extra qualities here and there. This was supposed to be a much quicker critique. I'm adding a bit of shadow just so maybe I could start to form the sphere of the eye. A bit of light for the inside of the eye just there. A bit of a crease for this side of the eye. Flipping the canvas continuously. Again, just trying my absolute best to create a more three-dimensional look to the face. And then darkening everything together. And creating this like continuous shadow along the center of the image, because this entire shadow is traveling along the half of the head, which is right at the center, denying a lot of light moving down. Okay. And then once again, in a new layer, it's almost like a ebb and flow of water, seeing how much I can get away with the light sneaking in, the shadow fighting back. And of course, I have to color correct all of this rim light to be blue. You can't have that glowy sunlight color, because one half of this image is overtaken by one very, very specific source of light. And one half, and the part that's facing the camera is getting just a little bit of that camera light. So just a little bit at a time until we get to this point where we feel like we have a nice balance between reds, yellows, all of that. So now I'm going to try to wake up these eyes again by doing what you did with that color in the eyes. The first thing I'm going to do is try to find that eye color. Just retrieve some contrast in the eyebrow area. The eyebrows are catching some of that light as well. Right, because hair in the eyebrows catches light very, very quickly. I'm going to create some final conditions on the dark half, which is darkening the ears, darkening some more stuff to be nice and out of the way. There's no reason for the ears to be catching this much light. Duplicating the layer and kind of finding that neckline once again, where all that light shoots in. And then of course, deleting away. These are conditions, meaning that we have borders we cannot cross. And all this light is flooding in around his head, which is the darkest zone. Duplicating again, making sure that upper half of the canvas, which is rejecting a lot of the light, is nice and deeply dark. That's way too dark. Using only the feathered edges of my brush. Okay. And then the lower half of the canvas just here is also nice and dark. So we've created the brightest zones, the lightest zones. We're going to merge down and start bringing in that bloom from the far left and the far right. This is the presence of the actual light source. This is the texture of the light source. Bloom is the matter of the light source. Like, I don't know how to describe it to you. Bloom is the light source. It's like tangible light. It's hard to explain it. Bloom needs to be painted in to represent the light. You can do it in the negatives by showing how shadow is inward, like in a shadow edge that has a softer transition that makes it feel like we have bloom. But yeah, there's really no comparing. And then I'm going to get Dodge Tool on highlights, blasting it on 100% and finding the points where we truly have the brightest brights. Just those really bright points that catch so much light. Again, this is all messy. You could do a much cleaner job when you have time. I have 3 paintings to get through today. So now that I did that, I'm going to maybe throw in some rim light. I don't want it to look cheesy because it looks cheesy really quickly. And I'm going to add that highlight in the eye. Sorry, brain fart. So color dodge, maybe get that pink. Here goes nothing. I don't know how you pulled this texture off, but I think it goes something like this. You kind of spike that far eye quite a bit to show that element of magic. And I'm doing the same thing with this eye. The whole eye. Because now that we have enough shadow, the character is really going to pop. And it feels like a vampiric character. I am now taking creative liberty. I am now doing what I feel like doing. In order to do that, I have to build narrative for the scene. I'm adding a little bit of that same red along the lips, along the cheeks. This is both the translucency color, the blush color, and the magical element color. I'm going to get soft light and do the same thing to try to create that magical presence there in the painting. So this is the magical stuff. This is it without it. I'm trying to stay true to the original artist's designs. Here's the before and after. So many steps to the lighting, but the first question was always, what's the light environment and how, and what is the time of day? The time of day is the light environment, and how is that affecting my choices? Before, after. So very different character, but I'm trying to match the size in the head and what you're doing with the nose and the mouth to match the eyes. That far eye was really collapsing, and it was very small and didn't belong to the face. And your lighting wasn't three-dimensional, and I understand that maybe that's not something you're going for. But the lighting not being three-dimensional means that a lot of stuff felt like it was just outlined. There was no real texture to the light. And then we have the... sorry, I lost my train of thought because I was trying to talk about the eye and then I looked over at the comments. What was I saying? So we have the drop in the eye, the lack of perspective, the presence of the nose where the nose was and the mouth, and then the three-dimensional rotation in the eye was also not there. So I tried to make it look more uniform in the light environment, making it look more uniform in a lot of ways. You could, if you wanted to, carry that light all the way up into the edges. And yeah, Kyle, don't answer questions like that. Those aren't your questions to answer. We don't know if it's going to be for a while or not. So I'm adding a little bit more highlight just on the inside. Just if you wanted that extra bit of outline and all that hair catching that light. Okay, so before, after, before, after. You were using orange daylight values on a nighttime scene, which didn't make sense. Even that kind of shine color you have here goes purple in this area, which matched that environment, which I kept. I kept the exact same almost pink color. But you're using daytime values for skin and daytime colors that just don't work. They just don't read. Okay? It's okay. Kyle's not in trouble. So any questions at all? Before, after, before, after. We balanced the colors, we balanced the light environment, we corrected some of the perspective, and we brought in more of the light's texture, that we represented the bloom and the gradation of values. And moving on to the next one. So this one actually I wanted to do really quickly. This is rotation of the face. So this one was posted to the subreddit, and I just want to make some quick corrections, tiny corrections that make a big difference. Her face looks very masculine and like it's painted by a different artist compared to his face, which has a perspective that has changed your style. So when you switch perspectives, sometimes it's like you started art all over again. So I'm going to match her face to mimic the style that we see with his. His is altered for the perspective, hers isn't. So the one thing that'll really make this pop is squinting her eye because she's looking up. Naturally, when we look up, we squint our eyes. She's looking right up at him. Her eyebrows are not moving with her gaze. Our eyebrows, if you look up, your eyebrows go up too. You can't deny it. If you look up, your eyebrows move up. They're trying to get out of the way so that you can see. And then I'm rotating that eye. And then I'm pushing her whole teeth section, which is why I'm saying it looks a bit masculine. And her mouth was just a little bit big. So masculine features and feminine features don't overlap very well in painting, because you accidentally end up painting a character that doesn't carry that same element of realism. It's harder to read real life anatomy in a painting. You always try to fit the mold in paintings. And I'm trying to now match the perspective. We're still keeping the same person, but it looks a lot less like a boy, which is, again, these are just general terms I'm using to describe the templates we're pulling from for these characteristics and the scale of these characteristics. So before, after. Is it Doctor Who? And so I'm keeping that same general type of face, but the rotation is still really, really important. Is it Doctor Who? So is it that female from Doctor Who? She did have pretty low eyebrows, but the rotation of the eyes should still be the same. She had a very strong jaw. Okay, so before, after, before, after. You almost had a front view trying to force its way out of side view. Do you see what I'm saying? And I'm just shrinking all the features, not because shrinking them is the only way to paint this girl. It's shrinking them to match the size of the head that you have here, which, speaking of which, is not structurally anatomical. It feels like it's much smaller. And then this entire this entire arm needs to be taken all out of its area and overlapped right on top of her torso. Why wasn't it overlapping her torso? Right? Because we're looking at a point where it's overlapped. You guys have a very hard time overlapping because of just the way you trained your art. And I don't really know where the other hand is. I'm also going to tuck her shoulder up as if he's just kind of like holding her. And I'm moving this arm up this way So all we're doing is just respecting the rotation. That's all we're doing. Okay, and then I guess you tuck this hand behind. Which doesn't make much sense, by the way, the whole tucking of the hand thing that you did. And then I guess his sleeve is right in front. And I'm just trying to patch this up as best as I can. Okay, and then flipping the canvas. And one thing I feel like is happening is that the other shoulder is missing. Oops. The other shoulder is completely missing. So I would want to at least place the other shoulder somewhere there, which might help just round things up in the perspective a little bit. It still makes sense to whatever's happening in the surroundings. And then something's bothering me about that neck, so I'm just going to try again. I'm just matching the sizes and scales of everything to the character. So that it feels like it's the same body parts attached to the same body parts. Like they're all matching the size of the body that they come from. And the rotation is really, really important because the mouth wouldn't be, if her mouth was where it used to be, it would be like a mouth that's stretched across the whole cheeks. It makes no sense from front view. And then finally the ears, which are not really matching anything else. So I'm going to make them start at the rest of the jaw, move back up, sit in between the eyes and the nose line, just like that. So I'm going to just show you the before and after now. And this is all based off the size of the body that you picked. So before, after. Do you see what I mean? How she looks more masculine than he does. So image size. Please upload proper size illustrations on my subreddit, please. No one's gonna steal your art. Just stop uploading 500 pixel with JPEGs if you want me to critique your work. So before, after. The eyebrow is now more of a side view eyebrow. In fact, you could even push it even more that way, because the eyebrow almost merges with the far edge. You've rotated the head so much, there's no space in between the eyebrows anymore. It's only one eyebrow now. Before, after, before, after. The mouth, which was taking up the whole face, is now pushed in the rotation. We're seeing less of the nose. In fact, the nostrils would just be somewhere here, closed off like that. Before, after. So, what's the proper size? Like 30K pixels? 3K by 3K, 3000 pixels by 3000 pixels. I think the other hand is above the hair. Not his hand. Her hand. I don't know where her hand is. Before, after, before, after. And again, if this is that original actress from Doctor Who, you're stylizing right now. You can't only stylize with one character and not stylize with the other. So you're stylizing in order to pull off the drawing. If you're trying to paint from realism, then there's a lot of things you did here that are not realism. So you have to make sure everything sits on the same levels. And then from side view, lashes are more visible from the side like this. And these ones kind of point up to reveal that she has looked upward. And I'm kind of just borrowing some highlight for that lower eyelid area. Before, after, before, after. So what are the main changes I did for this one? Can anyone give me a quick rundown? Very Disney-ish expression. Yes, I agree. Before, after, before, after. I'm just matching the size of the features to this. So you could have shrunken the whole head, but you still had to rotate the eyes. And you still had to kind of make it look like she was looking in his general direction. Again, I don't watch Doctor Who, so I don't really know specifically, but I have an idea of who this character is. And then for this one, the eyebrows are too low in the face. They don't make much sense. They feel like they have been drawn on lower than the eyebrow bone. So what we want to do is raise them up so that they sit on the eyebrow bone. And we don't just stop there. We have to paint the illusion of texture for the hair. I like the way you did the eyebrows. You didn't, at least you didn't try to paint every single little hair of the eyebrows. Okay, so at least it didn't do that. So what happens is we get the smudge brush and we smudge the eyebrows into the line of the nose. So this all gets merged together because we're making it feel like these eyebrows are growing out of the skin. And so we have to smudge them. Also, I feel like they're a bit too close together. Usually we make eyebrows, the finished, even in beauty, we make the eyebrows line up with the inner corner of the eye, that general area, not exactly, but that general area. So before, after. And again, we smudge the inside of the eyebrow a lot. We also reduce opacity on the inside of the eyebrow. Because that makes it feel like the hair is growing more sparsely on the inside. And then we use a slightly larger brush to add more hair. Toward the end of the hair, just out here, the eyebrow gets sharper. Okay, and then we blend that away. The block of the eye socket connects into the eye. Just like that. And we also blend that, but on a much smaller blending brush. So shrinking the brush, blending away that edge line. Oops. And then we make sure that the hair is growing downward from the top. So we're kind of merging, we're letting the hair kind of fall downward from the top. It grows upward from the bottom. And we're putting in a lot of brush strokes. But most of these brush strokes are going to get blended away. From the top, growing down. From the bottom, growing up. For the majority of eyebrows in the world. And then the ones here kind of grow upward. Just like that. So we have this like illusion that hair is there without actually painting hair. And so now we get the smudge brush and we smudge away the majority of these edges, leaving behind only the grain. And we end up with eyebrows that look like they're hairy, but we didn't actually paint with a small brush. And then once you're done that, we just kind of clean up any leftover edges, and we get a thin brush like my pencil brush, and we kind of take the skin tone and brush down to just kind of get those select few hairs. And don't be symmetrical about it because it's hair. It's not symmetrical. And we pick the skin tone color and we kind of pick where there are peaks of skin in between all of the eyebrow hair. Again, don't be symmetrical. And then smudging once again. Sometimes I get my larger smudge brush and I smudge that peak right before the slope, right before the peak of the arc of the brow, just so it feels a bit more painterly. And again, we only want the grain. So we're smudging away most of the edges of that brush stroke. We don't want anything contesting the eye. And we get a little bit of light and put it right on the middle of the eyebrow. Right here, just smack dab in the middle. And that makes it like the hair is shiny with the oils in the hair catching light. These eyebrows are a little bit asymmetrical. So there's oil in your eyebrows, there's sweat in your eyebrows. We're left behind with all the grain, and then sometimes the end of the eyebrow is just a little bit darker because it's right after that shine, so there's not much shine to it. Okay, and so the eyebrows feel like they're actually growing out, and the more you blend, the better for that inside. This little section right here really, really needs blending because there isn't enough light to show that edge there. And we don't do what we see in references all the time in our paintings. It's not allowed because the reference gets away with it. It gets to be a photo. But unnatural edges that are forced in a painting, we have to paint as if we're seeing everything with the naked eye. We're not painting as if we're a camera that can see every pixel. Some edges are blurred together because of periphery vision. And because these are hooded eyes, I'm adding just a little bit more highlight right at the top, just where that fat of the hood of the eye, or that lower eyebrow area, is catching some light. And then I usually sometimes just throw in a quick sharpen, just so my brush strokes come out. I can't add in any more detail, so sharpen helps me kind of bring out some of that detail. And then I'll show you the before and after. Before, the eyebrows were low. The eyebrows didn't have much shape. They really just looked like caterpillars. And they didn't have any hair growth grain. None of the hair growth was visible. And then after, we have more hair growth. And then now the hair growth is following a specific pattern. Upward from the inner corner, downward from the top, upward from the bottom, and it all adds up into one tail towards the end. This isn't just arrows just for fun. These are arrows. These are arrows that are for your brushstroke to follow. These are arrows of motion that you should be moving your brushstroke in. Okay, so before, after, they were also too low. It was like the character didn't have brow bones, or that they were painted too low. And if you want them to be just a little bit darker, it's very, very easy. You're just darkening exactly what you did, but you're keeping all the stuff the same. You're not darkening by adding more detail or anything like that. You don't want to do that. So if you want them to be the same darkness level, everything is exactly the same. So before, after. Do you guys have any questions at all? It's pretty quiet in the chat. You guys can see my screen, right? So this is today's before and afters. These are the before and afters from today. We have the eyebrows and how to add the illusion of texture, the perspective and how to adjust perspective and features so that they match the head size and the perspective. And then of course there is the full change here we did with the lighting. If you want to shrink the head of the character, you can, but you have to shrink the rest. You can't just shrink the eye. Okay, so I'll let you guys go. That was a lot of critiquing for one day. I will see you guys next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and Thursday the 21st will be the last critique hour that I do for this year. And it'll be the Warrior of Light critique hour, and I will bring in the artist that won the challenge, and hopefully we can hang out with them. If not, if I don't have time to set all that up, I will still do the critique hour for the Warrior of Light challenge. The winner wins portfolio review sessions with me. They win brushes, they win Portrait Studio, they win my masterclass, all free. So tune in on Thursday, bookmark it, please follow, make sure you click the notification bell so you guys can be there on the last critique hour of 2023. I'll see you guys next week at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. Bye guys.